The hum of the engines was steady, almost like a lullaby. Flight 782 had taken off from Frankfurt, heading toward New York. Passengers settled into their seats, some reading, some dozing, others scrolling through glowing screens. In row 10, seat B, a woman slept soundly with her head leaning against a window, her short brown hair hiding half of her face. She looked like any other tired traveler, just another passenger trying to pass the hours in the sky. But what no one knew was that behind her quiet demeanor lay a history very few could ever imagine. The flight had been smooth for nearly 3 hours, until suddenly, a sharp chime from the cockpit interrupted the calm. A flight attendant, pale-faced, rushed down the aisle toward the galley. Within seconds, the captain's voice came over the intercom. His tone was calm, but carried a weight that froze the cabin in place. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We are experiencing a situation. If there are any combat pilots or military personnel on board, please make yourself known to crew immediately." A ripple of whispers spread through the cabin. Passengers looked around in confusion and fear. Combat pilots? Why would the captain ask that? What was happening outside this aircraft, soaring 35,000 feet above the ocean? In row 10, the woman stirred. The announcement had cut through her sleep like a knife. Slowly, she opened her eyes, blinking at the fluorescent lights overhead. She straightened up, instantly alert in a way that didn't match the groggy movements of someone waking from a nap. Years of training had conditioned her body. Once awake, she was ready. Her name was Major Emily Carter, United States Air Force, retired. For over a decade, she had flown F-16s in combat missions across Iraq and Afghanistan. She had survived dogfights, missile locks, and the unbearable silence of knowing she might not return home. But she had left that world behind 2 years ago, trying to live a quiet civilian life. To the other passengers, she was just another woman in casual clothes. To the Air Force, she had been a decorated combat pilot with more confirmed air victories than anyone in her squadron. Emily unbuckled her seatbelt. Her instincts told her something was very wrong. She stood and caught the eye of a nearby flight attendant. "I'm a combat pilot," she said simply, her voice steady, without hesitation. The flight attendant's relief was almost visible. She nodded quickly and motioned for Emily to follow her. As Emily moved down the aisle, passengers stared. Some whispered, others just watched in silence, sensing that whoever she was, she carried kind of authority that didn't need to be explained. The cockpit door opened, and Emily stepped inside. The captain, a graying man in his late 50s, looked visibly shaken. His first officer kept glancing nervously at the radar screen. Emily spoke firmly. "Tell me what's happening." The captain exhaled, running a hand over his forehead. "We got a serious problem. Air traffic control warned us of a possible rogue aircraft in our airspace. No transponder, no communication. It's been shadowing us for the past 20 minutes. We tried signaling, nothing. We're not equipped for this kind of situation, but you might know what to do." Emily leaned over the radar screen, her eyes scanning. Her pulse quickened as she saw the blip, following them at a dangerously close distance. It wasn't just coincidence. Someone or something was tailing them deliberately. She asked sharply, "Do you have binoculars? Anything with visual magnification?" The first officer quickly handed her a pair used for navigation checks. Emily pressed them against the cockpit window, squinting into the fading light of the evening sky. And then she saw it, a small, dark aircraft, flying too close, with a shape she recognized instantly. It was an old Sukhoi fighter jet, the kind used by rogue states and militias. Her stomach clenched. Whoever was flying that jet wasn't just wandering, they were hunting. The captain's voice trembled. "What do we do? We're carrying 230 civilians. If they fire on us..." Emily cut him off. "Calm down. If they wanted to shoot us, we'd already be gone. They're testing us, seeing if we panic. We won't." She turned to the flight crew, her voice suddenly carrying the weight of command she thought she had left behind. "Listen to me. I need full access to the radio systems. Patch me into military frequencies. If they're monitoring, I might be able to scare them off." For the next few minutes, Emily's world shrank to the cockpit. She adjusted frequencies, broadcasting warnings in clipped military code. Her voice shifted from calm passenger to seasoned pilot, sharp and commanding. "Unidentified aircraft. This is United States military authorities speaking from civilian flight 782. You are violating international airspace protocols. Identify yourself immediately or risk military engagement." There was silence, then static, then a faint voice, crackling and hostile. "This airliner does not belong here. Divert course or we engage." The captain went pale. Passengers in the cabin had no idea how close they were to disaster. Emily's jaw tightened. She'd dealt with threats like this before, but never with innocent lives strapped into an aluminum tube at her back. She spoke into the radio again, colder this time. You're making a mistake. Military aircraft are already tracking your position. If you fire, you won't live long enough to see the ocean. It was a bluff. She had no confirmation of any military support, but her voice carried the kind of authority only someone who had sat in the cockpit of a fighter jet could possess. There was a long pause. The Sukhoi adjusted slightly, keeping distance. Then, without warning, it banked sharply and disappeared into the clouds. Emily tracked it until the radar no longer showed a signal. Only then did she exhale. The cockpit fell silent. The captain leaned back, sweat glistening on his forehead. My God, you may have just saved us all. Emily nodded, but her hands were trembling. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind the familiar ghost of fear she thought she had buried years ago. She looked out at the clouds, her reflection in the cockpit glass staring back at her. For a moment, she was back in the desert skies, dodging missiles, fighting to survive. And then, just as quickly, she was back in 2025, on a commercial airliner, trying to live a life that never really let her go. When she returned to her seat in row 10, the passengers broke into quiet applause. Some looked at her with awe, others with gratitude. But Emily just sat back down, pulling her seatbelt across her lap. She closed her eyes again, leaning against the window, as if nothing had happened. To them, she was a hero. To her, it was just another mission. Another reminder that once you've been a combat pilot, you never really stop being one. And as the engines hummed and the aircraft pressed forward into the night, the cabin slowly calmed. But in the quiet, one truth lingered. Row 10 was no longer just an ordinary seat. It was where a woman who once fought in the skies had once again saved lives, without firing a single shot. Like video and subscribe to Channel Stories Fear.